when my shadow wasn't enough. They laughed when I left, but they're all jobless now. Pain has a sound. It's the sound of people you trust, laughing behind your back. My name is Ethan Cole, and this is the story of how I walked away from a company that mocked me, only to return as the man who signed their unemployment letters. People think betrayal is loud, but betrayal is quiet, like the shift of a knife before it enters your back. I still remember standing in the glass boardroom of Skyline Innovations, high above Manhattan, thinking I belonged. I had given 5 years building that company. 5 years of weekends, sleepless nights, and skipped holidays. But when I discovered Mark, our COO, and a handful of senior staff siphoning money through fake vendor contracts, I didn't run to expose them. I walked, calmly, with evidence. I confronted them. They laughed like hyenas drunk on arrogance. "Ethan, you're too emotional," Mark said. Someone else added, "If you don't like how things work here, maybe you should leave." When I walked out, their laughter followed me like chains. By the next morning, my access card was deactivated. My company laptop wiped. My health insurance canceled. They issued a narrative that I resigned out of emotional instability. I was cast out of the very empire I built. But pain has a strange power. It sharpens your mind. And mine became a blade. I didn't know it then, but the men laughing that morning would one day beg me for mercy, and I would give them none. New York is a beautiful city until you're unemployed in it. Within weeks, I burned through my savings. Job interviews dried up after Skyline accidentally leaked that I was unpredictable and difficult. My landlord in Brooklyn gave me notice. The world I built shattered like a wine glass dropped on tile. In the cold of December, I slept 3 nights in my car. A Tesla I was still paying for. The humiliation broke something inside me. But on the 4th night, I received a call from my sister, Olivia, in Austin, Texas. Her voice was warm, too warm. The kind of warmth you don't get in Manhattan. "Come home, Ethan. Heal first. Fight later." That last part hit me. Fight later. I drove cross-country with nothing but a duffel bag and the evidence I had collected on Mark's corruption, kept safely on a drive they didn't know existed. Austin welcomed me with soft skies and quiet streets. Enough silence for a broken man to think. Enough silence to rebuild. But here's the truth. Silence is also where revenge is born. Every night, I replayed their laughter. Every night, my resolve hardened. One day, I'd return, not as their employee, but as their reckoning. Olivia's house smelled like lavender and fresh bread, comfort I didn't know I needed. In Austin, I wasn't the disgraced tech guy. I was just Ethan. Someone trying to breathe again. I got a small job at a local coffee shop. Humbling, but therapeutic. I served lattes to artists, remote workers, and dreamers. No one judged me. At night, I studied machine learning, ethical hacking, corporate forensics. I sharpened myself like a weapon. One day, I overheard 2 customers discussing a new startup accelerator in Dallas investing in AI creators. Something in me sparked. Why rebuild the past when I could create something bigger? I developed a prototype for an AI-powered audit system, able to expose corporate corruption in real time. Ironically, the very kind of fraud Mark and his cronies committed. The investors loved it. Within months, my startup CleanTrace Analytics was born. We grew fast. Too fast. And as fate would have it, Skyline Innovations began drowning in the one thing they never expected. Scandal. My technology. It was going to clean their mess. And then own them. CleanTrace exploded across Texas, onboarding banks, medical firms, and government agencies. My name slowly returned to the tech world, not as the guy who lost it, but as the guy disrupting corporate accountability. However, one morning during a conference in Houston, I opened my laptop and froze. A headline blinked back at me. Skyline Innovations under federal investigation for financial irregularities. My breath caught. It had begun. Mark and the others had been sloppy, too sloppy. The very fraud I once exposed internally had grown worse, like a tumor feeding on arrogance. A week later, a federal investigator contacted CleanTrace about potentially auditing Skyline. They wanted my company to dissect my old company. Poetic. Almost biblical. I accepted the contract. But I knew this was just the beginning. Because revenge isn't about striking fast. Revenge is about striking last. Walking back into Manhattan felt like returning to a battlefield. Same skyscrapers. Same cold wind. Same city that didn't care if you lived or died. Skyline's headquarters looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I had become larger. Their receptionist didn't recognize me. Good. I wore a dark suit, carried a clean trace badge, and followed the federal team into the boardroom. The same boardroom where they once laughed. Mark entered. His face drained of color. He recognized me instantly. "You," he whispered. "Good to see you, Mark," I replied. "Let's begin." He stuttered, trying to form a question, but the investigators cut him off. As I presented findings showing years of financial manipulation, Mark's hands trembled. Executives exchanged panicked glances. The empire was cracking, but I wasn't ready to end them yet. No, this was just the opening act. Their real destruction required patience. And I had all the time in the world. The audit lasted weeks. Every day revealed a new layer of Skyline's rot. Ghost vendors, altered financial statements, illegal kickbacks. Watching them crumble was both satisfying and strangely sobering. They weren't just corrupt. They were stupidly corrupt. A young accountant named Rachel slipped me a confidential report showing millions diverted to private accounts linked to Mark and 3 executives. She whispered, "I've always known something was wrong. Thank you for exposing it." Her fear reminded me who the real villains were. When the federal investigators presented the preliminary report, Skyline's boardroom exploded into chaos. Voices shouting, fingers pointing, accusations flying like broken glass. Mark tried to blame everyone but himself. His arrogance was unchanged. But the board made a decision that shifted everything. They placed Mark and the senior team on administrative leave. Temporarily. That word struck me. Temporarily meant they believed Skyline could still be saved. They were wrong. Because I already had a plan. A slow, suffocating plan that would leave every one of them unemployed. While I stood watching from the top floor, as Skyline fought to stay afloat, I met someone unexpected, Julia Trent, the board's internal whistleblower. She requested a private meeting in a small diner in Midtown. She slid a folder toward me. "These are internal memos showing that the board ignored multiple employee complaints about Mark's corruption," she said. "If this goes public, Skyline collapses." I opened the folder. Each document was a loaded gun. "Why bring this to me?" I asked. "Because you're the only one who's not afraid of them." Julia wasn't an enemy. She was a survivor stuck inside a burning building. She wanted out. We struck a silent pact. She'd feed me Skyline's internal implosions. I'd ensure she landed safely when the ship sank. Back in Austin, I formed an acquisition team with 2 investors who believed Skyline was salvageable. But only under new ownership. Mine. While the world thought I was auditing them, I was preparing to buy them. Revenge wasn't about destroying Skyline. It was about taking what they stole from me and building something better on their ashes. Skyline's scandal leaked to the press. Not by accident. A well-timed anonymous email, crafted carefully by me, made its way to major outlets. The headlines were brutal. Tech giant Skyline Innovations faces massive fraud allegations. Employees protest toxic leadership. Suddenly, the same employees who once worshipped Mark began turning against him. Videos of staff walking out went viral on TikTok. Mark tried hosting a press conference. A disaster. He stuttered, sweated, contradicted himself, and, worst of all, blamed me by name. That was a mistake. Because the public remembered me. People love a redemption arc. CleanTrace's website traffic tripled. Our stock price jumped. Skylines dropped like a stone. The dominoes were falling. But the best was yet to come. The board was splitting in 2. Julia sent me internal recordings of arguments so heated, someone threatened to resign on the spot. One phrase stood out. "Skyline is days away from bankruptcy if we don't secure emergency investment." That was my chance. I flew to Chicago, where a rival tech conglomerate, Armax Systems, was quietly circling Skyline like vultures. I met with their CEO, Nathan Briggs. He wanted to buy Skyline. I convinced him not to. "Let them bleed," I said. "The right buyer will step in at the right moment." That buyer was going to be me. By the end of the meeting, Nathan agreed to step aside. No competitors meant the board would have fewer options. Every move was chess, and I was 10 steps ahead. With bankruptcy threatening, Mark showed up at CleanTrace Austin office unannounced. He barged into my conference room, eyes wild. "You're doing this," he snarled. I smiled calmly. "Doing what, Mark?" "Destroying my company." "Funny," I said. I thought it was yours. He slammed his fist on the table. I made one mistake. No, I cut him off. You made many. And I warned you. He begged. Actually begged. I'll reinstate your reputation. I'll fix everything. You can't fix what you broke, I said. And you can't negotiate with a man you threw away. As he stormed out, I watched the last bit of his power crumble. Desperation looks good on evil men. And soon, he'd look unemployed too. Julia sent a midnight message. Board voting on liquidation options tomorrow. You need to move now. I didn't sleep. I drafted a formal offer to acquire Skyline's remaining assets, including intellectual property, patents, and facilities. Investors in Austin backed me without hesitation, not because they loved Skyline, but because they trusted me. By morning, my lawyers submitted the offer. The board dismissed it, at first, but when Skyline's primary investor pulled out hours later. Thanks to a private meeting I arranged, they reconsidered. Skyline was collapsing faster than they could react, and my offer was the only hand extended. Soon, they would have no choice. Morale inside Skyline plummeted. Employees left in waves. Entire departments cleared out. Julia reported that the remaining staff were working double shifts to keep systems online. Mark tried bribing employees to stay. No one listened. Because the truth had spread. Skyline wasn't just corrupt. It was dying. The board held emergency town halls. Employees cried. IT systems crashed. Customers terminated contracts. Every downfall has a sound. Skyline sounded like panic. I watched it all from Austin, silent. Not out of cruelty, but justice. They laughed at me when I left. Now, they couldn't even hold their own chairs. Skyline requested another meeting. This time, they were willing to negotiate. I arrived in Manhattan with my legal and financial team. The board looked exhausted. Dark circles, trembling hands, a table full of empty coffee cups. We want your offer, the chairman said. I leaned back. My previous offer is expired. Shock rippled through the room. But, he stammered, we need immediate capital. I nodded slowly. I can submit a new offer, but the terms will be different. Mark glared at me, knowing exactly what was coming. They no longer got to keep their jobs. My new offer required removal of Mark, removal of all senior executives, full transfer of internal ownership to Clean Trace, zero severance packages. They had no leverage. They accepted. Mark's face turned white as snow. A new dawn was coming, and he wasn't part of it. Mark didn't accept his fate quietly. That night, he called me from an unknown number. I know what you're doing, he said, voice low. And I will burn Skyline to the ground before I let you win. You already did, I replied. Silence. Then the sound of him breaking, something between a sob and a growl. You won't get away with this, he whispered. But he was wrong. This wasn't about getting away with something. It was about ending something. The federal investigation concluded. Their findings: fraud, embezzlement, insider manipulation, tax evasion. Mark and 3 executives were referred for criminal charges. The board, in despair, signed the acquisition papers. Clean Trace officially owned Skyline Innovations. I stared at the signed documents for a long moment. Not smiling, not laughing, just breathing. 5 years ago, I walked out of that building with humiliation in my chest. Now I walk back in with keys in my hand. My first act as owner? Fire every senior executive involved. Publicly, I replaced them with young, ethical, brilliant minds from underappreciated communities across Dallas, Austin, and Atlanta. People who needed a shot. Employees who remained were given overtime pay, therapy support, and transparent financials. A company built on corruption was reborn through integrity. But this wasn't the end of the story. Because Mark wasn't done, and neither was fate. 3 months later, Mark was arrested in Las Vegas, trying to flee the country. He had lost everything. His house, his accounts, his marriage. I watched the news clip. He looked hollow, a ghost wearing a suit. A reporter asked, "Do you have anything to say?" "Yes," he said. "Tell Ethan Cole he ruined my life." I turned off the TV quietly. Truth is, I didn't ruin his life. He did. I simply turned on the light. A year after the takeover, Skyline, now renamed Clean Sky Technologies, held an event in New York. Hundreds of employees attended. As I spoke on stage, employees cheered. Some cried. Some thanked me for saving their jobs. Their gratitude healed a part of me I didn't know was bleeding. But the biggest surprise was seeing Rachel. the accountant who first helped me uncover corruption. She handed me a thank you letter. "You saved us," she whispered. "No, they saved themselves. I just removed the poison." One evening in Austin, a note was left on my car windshield. "You won't always be on top. M." It wasn't Mark. He was in custody. Someone else was angry about the takeover. Possibly a former executive. Possibly a shareholder. Revenge stories attract revenge. But I wasn't the same man I once was. I increased security, hired protective intelligence experts, and waited. Turns out, the threat came from someone surprising. The culprit was identified: Harold Briggs, a former board director who lost millions due to Skyline's collapse. He saw me as the enemy, not Mark. He wanted revenge. But when federal agents questioned him, he confessed everything, including a plan to sabotage Clean Sky's servers. He was arrested. As he was led away, he shouted, "You'll get what you deserve, Ethan." I didn't reply, because I already had. I got justice, not revenge. There's a difference. I visited my old apartment building in Brooklyn, the place where I once lost everything. The landlord recognized me. "You're doing well now," he said cautiously. I nodded. "Yes, better." I paid off the old debt I owed him. Not because he deserved it, but because I wanted to close the chapter cleanly. On my walk back, I stood at the Brooklyn Bridge. Same spot I once cried alone. This time I smiled. Pain had a purpose. A major journalist requested an exclusive interview about my journey. I almost declined, until I realized this wasn't about me. It was about everyone who had been betrayed, mocked, or cast aside. During the interview, she asked, "What kept you going when they laughed at you?" I replied, "The belief that storms don't bury seeds, they plant them." The interview went viral. Millions watched. Millions connected. I wasn't just rebuilding a company. I was rebuilding people. Julia, the whistleblower, visited Austin. She accepted a senior position at Clean Sky. We walked through the new facility together. She looked around with awe. "You changed everything, Ethan." "No," I said. "We changed it." And then she said something that froze me. "Did you know the board once joked about replacing you with an intern?" Mark started the rumor. I felt nothing, because the past no longer had power over me. I had outgrown it. Clean Sky expanded to Seattle, Boston, and Miami. We became the #1 corporate audit AI platform in the US. My mother called from California crying. Your father would have been proud. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry too. Success was no longer about beating Skyline. It was about proving that integrity wins. But something remained unfinished. One last act. One last poetic justice. On a warm morning in Manhattan, Clean Sky hosted a massive employment fair. Thousands attended. And in the crowd, I saw them. My former coworkers. The ones who laughed. The ones who mocked. The ones who joined Mark's campaign against me. All jobless. All desperate. One of them, Eric, approached me nervously. "Ethan, can we apply? We need work. Please." I stared at them silently. The weight of the past pressed on my chest. Then I spoke. Everyone deserves a second chance. But not in the place they once tried to bury someone else. Their faces fell. Calmly, I continued. I won't hire anyone who participated in Mark's corruption or in the lie they told about me. But I will sponsor job training programs for you. Not out of pity, but because we rise by lifting others. Shock. Tears. Silence. They expected revenge. I gave them justice. Real justice. As they walked away, humbled but hopeful, I felt something lift off my soul. I didn't destroy them. Life did that. I simply chose to rise. They laughed when Ethan left. But in the end, he rose higher than they could ever imagine. And when they returned broken, expecting cruelty, he gave them integrity instead. Because true revenge isn't destruction. It's transformation. Thank you for listening to my story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. Thank you.